Hey guys, how are you doing? Today's video is going to be a little lengthy. I'm going to be showing you how I cover the gap on a minimized Nite Finder. This is a mod that I have done before in the past, and there are write-ups on various Nerf sites, so if you want to go read it, there will be a link in the description to a couple of them. This is just going to be showing you how I go through the process of covering the gap. So like I said, it'll be a little lengthy as I just kind of explain it step by step. There will be some areas where I will just cut out, and there will be some areas where maybe I'll fast forward through just to keep it down on time, and I'm sure you don't want to be watching every single move. Altogether, minus the wait time, it's probably about 1 hour's worth of time, so plan on an hour, hour and a half of mod time plus waiting. So like I said, most of this I got done in a single night, and the final step, which was sanding, just finishing it up, was all done on the second night. So other than that, let's get going. Obviously the first thing you want to do is to minimize the Nite Finder. There are many ways of doing it, and I just decided that this time to use my Dremel. Usually I would just use my scroll saw, but this is just the part of cutting it out. And then after that is all done, you'll definitely want to remove that front part. And once that part is removed, you will want to use your Dremel to sand down the edges. You can see that it's being done here. I use just the sanding bit to smooth it out as much as possible, and then I'll be going through, as you'll see, with files to get it all the way smooth on the shell. So here you can see I'm using a file to get down most of the extra plastic that I don't need, and also to smooth it out as much as possible to the shell. The nice thing about this file that I have is that it has some really big teeth on one end and then a finer sanding file on the other end, and one half of it is slightly curved and the other half is straight, so it makes it really nice for this application that I'm using. And here you'll just kind of go through you'll see just a kind of a quick succession of the files with the Dremel, and just going back and forth until you have the finished product, which is a clean, minimized Nite Finder. Of course, obviously you want to take out the screw ports and or just file those down so that they are flush with the shell. So here I'm just showing you the two pieces of styrene that you'll need to cover the gap. This piece here is obviously for the handle part here. It will get glued on there and then bent around, and then also sandwiched up there in that curve. You can see it's also a lot longer than we need, which is great. You always want to give yourself a little bit of extra wiggle room for your pieces. You can see this is about 1 inch by 4 inches, but you'll probably only need about 3.5 inches, maybe a little less. And then this piece down here, which is 1 inch square, is going to be used for this top part here. And this is also just a little bit longer and just a little bit wider. There's just a little bit of a gap. See if I can get that in there for you. So there's just a little bit of it left, which is great, so that you can file that down and get that nice and smooth. Alright, so now that we have the styrene pieces cut out, I went ahead and scored the center marks. Let's see if you can see that. I went ahead and scored the center marks for where the pieces will be removed, and I'll be snapping those off. And I've also put two indicators just with a Sharpie, just so I know how these line up, so I can remember how that goes. And then of course those also correspond. I've put in little marks here and one there, just as reminders as to how these line up. So that is there. Along with this, you'll need your glue to secure it. So I use some zip ties, and I also have this small circular piece of cardboard. And what this is for is that when the styrene piece is bent over, this curve here, I will place this piece of cardboard there, and then secure it with a zip tie, and that will help to make sure that the styrene stays in this curve. And then so there will be a zip tie here to secure that. There will be a zip tie here to secure this fold on this piece, and then another zip tie along the top to secure this piece, though it won't really need one as much on this side, but definitely one here to make sure that this fold or the bend stays there. So let's get started. So here, very easy to snap styrene. I mean, you can just bend it gently in the middle, and then that goes, and I won't actually break it all the way. I'll just kind of keep it at that, and then what we'll do is we'll put a little bit of tape on the outside, and that will help keep the styrene pieces together. And then this one there. For this I just use what I have around, and that's usually just this blue painter's tape. Constantly have some on my desk, so we'll just use this. And then what we'll do to get that apart, once we have it glued down, you can then use a sharp knife, and that can go through the seams, and then you can remove the styrene halves, and then you can use the knife to remove those too. So we will start with this small piece here, which is fairly easy to do. Alright, so simply just apply the glue. I found that with this you don't need to apply too much, and try to make sure that the glue doesn't get too close to this center gap in the middle, or else you may glue the shell halves together, and try to line up the center mark of the shell with the center mark on your cut. That way you can at least it'll be a consistent removal of the half. Put that down. Sorry, it's a little close for you. There it goes. And just kind of press down a little bit. Alright, and then we'll take a zip tie here. Alright, so there you go. So we just let that dry, and then we will get to the other part. Alright, hold on guys. Alright, now that the one piece is all dried and set to go, I've just added a rubber band here because I forgot I had no screws in this thing, so I just wanted to keep the blaster together while I do this next part. All the prep I have done here is that I've lifted up some of the tape so that I can see where the seam is, and then I can put this down, and then I can try to line up those seams together. I've gone ahead and pressed this down. I've lined it up, and I've kind of just done a pre-test, or a dry fit to the blaster, so I can kind of see how it goes, and you can see that the styrene holds some of the bend already, and all we're going to need to do is, once we get the glue down, grab a zip tie, put it around that. I usually do this part, glue that down first, get the zip tie around, then put the glue down here, and then put this combination of cardboard tube plus zip tie there. The one thing you'll want to note though when gluing down is that this part here can sometimes, the glue can spread, so make sure you kind of spread a small amount in the middle so that the glue won't cross. Also, I've removed this screw port here. This also joined together when I was gluing my last one together. this one, I didn't cut this, and the glue had seeped on both of those parts, which really sucked, and it's a hard spot to try to remove, so I just had to wiggle it, and it did break off a little bit, so it wasn't as clean. So it's one thing I need to always remind myself, is to cut this, and then just to make sure to keep the glue separate from this line here. So let's get started. This is kind of awkward for me to try to do this all around a camera, so I apologize for any oddities that may happen, but you'll just have to make do. So just put on some glue there. And remember, when you put this down, to try to line up the seam as best you can. Sorry if this is all unfocused. I like to just try to set it down, keep some pressure on it. I've also found that if you exhale onto the glue, it kind of helps to act as a quick release, so that it helps to dry the glue a little bit faster. So hold on. I know some people don't like to use Zap-A-Gap just because it does have a long set time, but it's extremely hard glue, and it's just one that I just have a preference for. So, you know, you're going to have to use your own preference when doing things like this. Also, when doing when using zip ties, it's a good idea to try to press down on different sides, because the plastic will conform pretty nice to the just to the shape that you're trying to zip tie to. Try to get that on nice and snug. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be able to get that pressure on the top. My seam is still good. Push that up a little bit. Get that on. Alright. Good. And we'll just let that set for a little bit before I move on to the next part. There it goes. And just to make sure that that glue sets for a little bit. So we'll keep that for the side, and then we'll come back and we'll do the final part. Alright guys. Alright, so the glue has set, so we will finish this thing up. So make sure to try to get some glue on those corners. And a little bit here. We'll press that down. Get this guy ready. Oops. Tighten it up. Recenter it so that it's on the center line. I'm pushing down to get pressure so I can tighten the zip tie as much as possible. Scooch that forward so that it creates a good pressure, or has good pressure on that curve. And there you go. Just tighten that up as much as possible. Alright, so just set that aside, let it dry, And then when it's all done, you just cut the zip ties, and then we'll sand that down and we'll see how it goes. Alright guys, hold on. Alright, so for the final step, we're just going to be sanding down the styrene and conforming it to the shell, just taking off the excess. You'll see I'll be going through first, removing most of the chunks with the Dremel, and then after that I'll be going through with a file and with a small sand bar or a sand pad. I'm not sure what they call them. Sand sponge, I think it is. And so the sand sponge will be used mainly on the flat surfaces to get rid of any marks on the surface, as well as to kind of smooth down the cut lines or where the seam is on the styrene. And the file and the Dremel will be used mainly on the sides to get that to be smooth and to kind of round the corners off a little bit. You may also see that the seam on the handle doesn't quite come together exactly. I'm not sure why that is. It always fits well, but then when the shell comes together, that gap always seems to be there, and I always forget that it's there. When putting this together, I should put a small spacer there so that it will be a little bit wider than normal, so that when I put the styrene together, that gap won't actually be there, because the shell will be apart a little bit more and then the styrene will actually close. And I always forget to do that, but overall it doesn't look too bad. If you want, and I have done this in the past, is I've gotten a small threaded spacer and then I've put 2 screws on the outside, and that keeps it closed just so that it looks a little bit nicer. So again, it's not anything too terrible. It doesn't show too bad, but that is the finished product. So that will be it. I'll have some pictures up at the end of the final product, but again, it's just the shell modifications. I haven't actually painted it. You know, that'll be for another time. So if you guys have any questions, please put them in the comments below. If you like the content, please subscribe, please like the video, and we will see you guys again next time. Alright, talk to you later.